This video is my recap from the USA Triathlon Long Course National Championships last week in Daytona at the International Speedway, where I competed in the Duathlon, which consisted of a 5K run, 56-mile bike, and a half marathon. And this race was epic. A great one to end the year. I won my first national championship, which can't tell you how much that means to me. After all these years of racing and learning and failing and winning, and all what comes with that, to win my first national championship, just absolutely amazing experience. So didn't actually know if I was going to be able to race this national championship, as just over 2 months ago, after our second hurricane here in the Tampa Bay area, I had a bad crash on my bike, and I landed on my head and my wrist, and I don't remember the fall. I remember hearing a smash on my head, which was my helmet. And the next thing you know, I had paramedics over me, and they were, taking care of me, taking me to the hospital, where I had a CAT scan on my head. And I know some of you will dispute this, but I was cleared from a brain injury. No bleeding, no skull fracture, just a really bad concussion, swelling, and what goes with a bad concussion. With that, when I was in the hospital, I remember feeling my wrist starting to hurt, which that resulted in a broken wrist. So I remember sitting in the emergency room thinking, overall, I can't have many more of these falls. I had a really bad one 2 years ago with a concussion, and have had a couple other falls, that have impacted the head. But two in the last 2 years, so that made me really doubt what was going to happen next and the future. Just, don't want to mess with the head long term. And then we had to deal with the wrist as well. So that was with 2 months leading, out to this race. And I knew I could work around the wrist. It's a run, bike, run. So just manage around what limitations I'd have around the wrist, which I, of course, could not take another fall on the bike with, even if it was just the wrist. I was, got a cast and so forth. So I had that to deal with. But more importantly, to figure out, and this before I left the hospital, I was going to figure it out. And whatever that meant, I wanted to figure out a plan to have this race as a possibility. And if I worked my way through, these issues, I would at some point make a call of, go or no go for the race. So having gone through this with my head before, I knew exactly what to look for and the protocols to take, one day at a time, and, easing my head and body back into just running and biking again, and then having the head respond to, raising my heart rate and bouncing and all those things. So that I put into place immediately. One thing I knew I couldn't do was ride my bike outside with the wrist again and the head. There's no chance of taking another fall. So I was exclusively on my trainer for the 2 months, with the exception of one ride the week before the race. And I get bored on the trainer inside, so I thought, how could I make this interesting? So I took my trainer down to the Safety Harbor Pier and rode outside, next to the water countless times in those 2 months. I was riding, 5 to 6 times a week. And on Sundays, I was on that trainer for an 80, 85, and 90-mile bike ride on the trainer, you know, getting my work in. So I made that work, and definitely had some ups and downs over the 2 months. And the 2 weeks before the race, a week before the race, I was having really bad vertigo symptoms for a couple weeks, and I got that cleared a week before the race. And I went and then tested my head more than anything at a 5K just to see if I could handle pace for that first run in the race. How would my head respond during that run and then after? Because I was having some headaches, you know, after some of my long workouts, but I was getting better. So that was I passed that test a week before, you know, nationals, and that just gave me a ton of confidence. I had actually a really good pace on this 5K race, and my head responded during and after. So I was on cloud nine with that, just, you know, thinking the body could be ready. The 2 days before that, I did my first ride outside in San Antonio in the hard hills up there, and had a really good, strong workout. That gave me some confidence that even though I was on the trainer the whole time and, you know, had some downtime after the accident, my legs were close to being bike ready. And I knew I was run ready. So, you know, heading into the race, I had some confidence, you know, with where I was. You know, a lot of questions through that time. Race morning, you know, 5K to start. We started on this sidewalk on the interior of the International Speedway track. And so we were on the infield, and the 5K was an out and back, like 0.7 miles out, 0.75 back, and do that twice. So it was a 2-lap, but it was on a narrow sidewalk in which we had to start single file, and you would pass the mat to, you know, record your start time. I knew 2 of my competitors in my age group, and they started before me. So I mentally banked that they started ahead of me. So at the end of the race, you know, if I could be close to them at some point, I didn't necessarily have to finish the finish line before them, but, you know, before the time in which they started it in front of me. So, but anyway, so I started the 5K. I had a really good run. I was really pleased with my first run. Pace was faster than my target, while also my head was in control, and also my heart rate, which I was certainly monitoring with just everything going on with the head. Just, you know, taking mental notes there, but I felt really good at a really good pace for the heart rate, and just felt good. I came in after that first run right behind one of the gentlemen, Brad, and another gentleman, Phelan, who was ahead, and he had started earlier. He was already gone on the bike, and then Brad got out of transition onto his bike before I did. So I was trailing both of them heading out on the bike. Got off to a little slow start on the bike. Heart rate was a little elevated, which that's typical, but I settled into my target heart rate on the bike, and that's critical for me in this distance. I've had some challenges with that in the past, with going above heart rate and exerting a lot on the bike and then suffering on the run. So I was mindful of that. I settled in. At mile 8, I caught Brad and passed him, and then he was on my tail till mile about 25. In that time, we both passed Phelan, and man, we were working our butt off. Then at mile 25, Brad passed me, took over that lead, and he had that until mile 50. And I was working my butt off just to, you know, stay within reason with Brad. And geez, at mile 50, Phelan passes us both pretty easily. And but then of course, that energizes you to don't let him get too far. So we fought. I actually felt in a way better the last 6 miles and the entire 50 leading up to that point. It was a tough ride, fighting to stay within, the group there, and came in transition. It was the three of us. As we came into transition, we all were racking our bike at the same time, which for me, that was good news, as I had started behind them both at the start line. So technically, I knew I was ahead at that point. I quickly made the transition. I was really focused at the end of the bike, to what I had to do in transition, what I laid out before the race, and I grabbed my nutrition, hydration that I had laid out, and of course, changed back into my running shoes, and I took off. So I took off before both Brad and Phelan, and before, it had to be around, it was before the first mile mark and the first aid station. Phelan passes me like I was just jogging and he was running. It was quite impressive how he passed me. When I went out of transition, I also realized I had my cycling jersey on that I planned to wear for the first run in the bike, as it was cold, cool. But I planned to shed that, and my gloves, and I was so focused on nutrition, I forgot. Mistake. So at the first aid station, I pitched my gloves, had to throw them away in the trash, and kept moving. And I knew at some point I was going to have to trash my jersey, as I wasn't going to make 3 laps around the track to make up that half marathon, as it would heat up. So when we got around turn 2, which would be the back stretch of the Speedway, I lost sight of Phelan. He was gone. He was running so fast. And I was actually running a really good pace. Quicker than my target for the race for that second run. And I was feeling good. I was behaving myself with heart rate, but he was gone. And I just thought to myself a couple things. Wow, the national championship potential for this race on this day could be gone, but just keep fighting. You never know. It was, early, it was probably mile 2 at that point. You never know what happens later in the run. So just keep fighting, keep doing my thing. So, got around the Speedway, and when we come around turn 4, there's an opening in the track where you exit the track and go underneath the grandstand. So it lines the entire length of that side with pit row and the finish line, start line. So once we exited the track, you then have to go the entire underbelly of the grandstand to the end, U-turn, come back, and then exit back onto the track. And that would complete 1 lap. So when I did that under the grandstand, Phelan was still far ahead of me. And it was hard to tell with the U-turn at that point if I had made up any ground or not. But it didn't seem like he was further along. But, at that point, it was all guesswork. Got back on the track, and then as we then started lap 2, where that first aid station was, where I had pitched my gloves, I noted where Phelan was, because we had to go on the infield again for another just quick little spot before we U-turn and come back onto the track, really to start the real full part of the laps. And this is lap 2. When we crisscrossed and he had already made the U-turn, I just noted where he was. And I would make a mental note of that and see if on lap 3, if I had made up any ground. So I was starting lap 2 and back up just a bit. When I was under the grandstand, I unzipped my jersey, and as I was running and going past one of the aid stations, I had to throw my jersey away. I couldn't wear that thing for the remaining 2 laps. So I pitched my jersey in the trash, and now I just had my tank, which was, of course, much more comfortable. So I'm taking my nutrition like clockwork. That was great working. On lap 2, when we got to the backstretch where I lost visual sight of him on lap 1, I now spotted Phelan, and that just gave me a lot of juices, a lot of life, that I'm closer than what I was in the previous lap. There's some hope here for, just getting back in the game. And I was in the game, and mentally that just so energized me. And I was still running at a really good pace. and feeling good. That was great. We get around to go under the track, and go into the under the grandstands again. And this time when we made the U-turn, I knew I closed the gap from when I saw him previously, but it was still a significant distance. So not knowing what that meant in time yet, we get back out on the track, and then we go to that first aid station again where we had to go in the infield, and where I had made that mental note in lap 2 of where we crossed, I made up a significant amount of ground from lap 2. Again, just energized me. It gave me so much motivation and just drive to fight, just keep fighting. That this, again, I was in the game. We get on that back stretch where, the first lap I lost sight of him, second lap I could see him. Now he was a lot closer, and again, just energizing. Again, just I'm cutting into this lead that he had, and I still had the buffer of he started ahead of me. We go under the track again, and now we're within 1 mile to the final, to the end, and I'm really closing on him, and I'm going up a climb. We had to go up a climb when we were underneath, and then go a little bit of a distance, and then down, and then go to that point where we were making the U-turn. When I went down the hill, I didn't intend to pass him at that point, but I did. I just let my body go, so the momentum just really, I was like in a sprint and went by him. So he then knew I just passed him, and then he got on my heels and stayed there. And when we made the U-turn at the end, he then takes off like he's in a sprint. And I just remember thinking, come on, man. We're both dying. I know we're both dying. And he took off, and this is a national title on the line. And now we're, probably a little more than a half mile left. And we started going up the hill, and I closed the gap a little bit going up the hill. And then we had to go down the other hill, still under the grandstand. And then we probably stayed, an equal distance apart. He's probably 15, 20 yards ahead of me, and we exit the track. And again, I knew I was estimating he may have started like 45 seconds ahead of me. So just keep that gap within 45 seconds. We exit the track. And to exit the track from the grandstand, you have to go up, and then there's, the embankment of the track. So it was, you go up and then a little down onto the track, and then a hard right turn. And that takes us into the finish line, the blue carpet. And when I went up and then down and made that right turn, my right hamstring began to seize, which is not uncommon for me. And at this point last year, with about 200 meters left before the finish line, I had both legs lock up, and I went down for about 90 seconds. And I know I couldn't afford that on this day. And my hamstring was seizing, and I just went into an early sprint. I was like, I got to change my motion, my stride. And I just went into a full sprint that I thought I could handle through the finish line. And it was incredibly uncomfortable, full of discomfort, sped through the finish line. I estimated I was like 15 seconds behind, 10 seconds behind Phelan at that point. So I thought I had won the title at that point, but you don't know. So I needed confirmation, but I get through the finish line. Of course, I then Charlie horse and went down for a couple minutes, and then got my bearings together. I finally got back to the car where I walked off, and I was parking on the infield. Got back to my phone, turned the phone on to check the results, and it showed I won. And wow, very emotional moment. All these years, you never know. Like, I never know. There's a possibility I would never win a national title. And then with the accident, not knowing if I was going to race, and then just kind of figuring it out. And then just having I just had a great execution. My second run was the best run I've ever had at this distance. It was 34 seconds faster than my target pace, and I just listened to my body, and I just wanted it really bad on that day. And so yeah, I had a great pace for the race. And my final quarter mile, once I started seizing up and then running into the finish line, I ran a 5:49 pace for that last quarter mile, and my fastest mile of the 13 was the last mile. So I'm so happy with that output, fight, and just kind of just figuring it out and giving it everything. And wow, big day. It was great to share it with teammates that were there, friends, and then later talking with family and friends back home, and Lauren, and you all know who you are. Thank you so much for your support. It means everything to share this with. A lot of hard days, a lot of low days, a lot of high days, and this was definitely one of the high ones. And yeah, just extremely happy to win my first national title. And now I'm just taking some time off, and we'll get into the new year. And I know my target race is for next year, but I'm not really thinking about that right now. Just savoring this and recovering. So that's it from the Giraffe Den. Until next time, next year, add health to your life.